4 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. I'm Grace Luttrell, Cascade Township Supervisor. This is the Township Board workshop on the proposed strategic plan. Clerk Slater, you want to call the roll?
Treasurer Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Present.
Trustee Kessel.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Director Lundgren.
Here.
Trustee Norhuck. Absent. Clerk Slater, here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
I'll approve I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Or
The motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald, to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Before we open up public comment, we'll just do a brief introduction. So this is the proposed strategic plan coming to the board for review, proposed edits, recommendations, that was based on multiple workshops and hearing from over 1,800 residents or so.
Yes, how many years survey?
Yep, and then different meetings with the Planning Commission, the DDA.
We did have a meeting with the body, we had the Parks Committee.
Parks Committee.
We had the county staff, we had the business leaders.
And then a round 2 of the survey. So this is the culmination of that, and now the board is going to walk through it and provide their feedback.
I see some, since I was also sitting on that committee, it became evident early on that a lot of this was formatted upon what they got feedback from our residents. So, you know, it wasn't something that was thought up in a whirlwind never mind, a fast meeting by the township board or small group. It was by the residents. So that's all I have to say.
Great. So this is more informal, but we do have the formal process. We'll open it up to public comments, which we would love it, encourage anyone here or online, people can watch too. And then as we go through as a board, we'll add another public comment session at the end before we adjourn. Kind of try to balance that formal and informal structure. So anyone here from the public that wants to make a comment, either in person, questions? Thanks for being here. Anyone online, Jessica?
There's one participant online, but she has not raised her hand.
Okay. So Chris, you want to start, kind of just give us a introduction and you'll walk through
The
it?
real introduction, but I think it's going to be led by 4 members, particularly in the town, who have very nicely written all this out. Basically, we walk through it, with the regions you guys want to see. And then I will take it down in clear fashion and back. If any sort of discussion points, a question or something like that, I think we should try to organize the meeting. But I don't anticipate on that.
Great. If Trustee McDonald, you want to kind of walk through?
Sure, thank you. That's great. Yeah, as I said, Chris, and everybody put this together. It's a very excellent document. There are just some points of clarity in some of the way things were worded that I thought would be really clearer if we cleared up the language and clarified some things. So I kind of went through it page by page, and I think we can do that because in some pages it's going to take 0 time. Other pages it might take 10 or 20 seconds or maybe a minute of discussions or questions. So when I started off was on the first in the introduction. It was really well put the purpose But again, this is a strategic plan, and the strategic plan says you're kind of setting a high-level roadmap for where the township's gonna go. It's not a specific, we're gonna do these 11 things, definitely, but these are the things that we're gonna strive to do. So I just tried to make the wording of the purpose a little more strategic, rather than to say, these are the actions to be taken. They're really proposed actions. So that's why I softened it up to say the purpose of this document is to serve as a roadmap that describes the guiding principles, priorities, and proposed actions for the township board, et cetera. And then I wanted to add that the final actions will be contingent on resource availability, financial evaluation, and approval by a majority vote of the township board, because we are, in essence, responsible for everything in the plan.
What page on, I'm just looking for the,
This is the introduction.
Roman numeral 4.
Roman numeral 4, sorry.
Before the page numbers even start.
yeah, where's my,
No.
Right in the front. And the first one, introduction.
There you go.
got it, okay,
So it says, where it says,
yeah,
the purpose is to clearly describe and prioritize the actions to be taken. Since this is a strategic document, doesn't mean we're going to specifically take every action, but those are proposed actions. So the reason I documented it is everybody have it in front of them. And I was just recommending that we change it from what that purpose is to what I wrote.
I like it, I agree. This part, this second sentence though, I don't have a problem with it, it's kind of, goes without saying though. Final actions will be contingent on resources, like I like how you softened it and it was I don't have a problem with that in second sentence, I just think it's kind of is obvious, like.
It's obvious to us because we've been doing this for years, but to residents, it's not obvious.
Okay, that's fine, I don't,
I think that makes sense.
okay,
Especially because, you know, it needs to be very public facing, especially this page, right at the beginning.
Right.
This way, I think that-
You know, and we'll see later on in the document where there are things that says the township will hire 3 people. Well, it doesn't say anything about resource availability, financial evaluation, or approval by the board. This kind of clarifies for everybody right up front the purpose.
all right, so any comments, questions? Everyone on board with making the language changes? The Tom just described? Yeah, thank you.
Then I jump right to page 3. Again, I was just kind of trying to. Page 3, task 3-1. The word enshrine is used. I don't know if we were really enshrining or incorporating them into the master plan. And my only other comment on when we use master plan, I just thought for public purpose, it's good to understand. Maybe we have a description up front that says what's the difference between the 10-year state mandated master plan versus our strategic plan.
Yeah, we do that.
Because we do have a master plan and we have a strategic plan. And obviously they will go hand in hand. But the master plan is a 10-year mandate by the state, which we have to do.
You also have a parks and recreation plan. the
Correct.
I like that, it's another introductory thing.
When is the master plan up for? When was it last done?
So it was completed in 2019, 2018.
18, I think.
So we're required to at least do an update at the 5-year mark. So that would be 2023.
But a full one wouldn't be until 20 years.
Yeah, so we can certainly do a full update in 2023, but at a minimum, act requires a review or an update in 5 years.
You're allowed at 5 years to have a planning commission pass a resolution saying, there are no legal in 10 years you have to act.
And by the way, just for McKenna's purpose, where else we use those, incorporate?
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to place.
Yeah, and that's literally at the top of your notes, and it's a good point, that because the document takes the same meat and then repeats it 3 times in 3 different ways, everything you say is gonna have to be done 3 times.
Right. Just what I'm
An
at.
extra copy of it, do you have one?
I have it on my phone, but if there's an extra, I'd love to have it. I have a question. Thanks. What's actually the difference between a master plan and the 10-year one or the Cascade or strategic? What is it actually?
The substantive difference, the master plan is very focused on land use and zoning and how that feeds into those. Now, it can have all sorts of other aspects to it, right? You can talk about transportation, talk about parks and recreation, you can talk about, a lot of things this talks about. But the statutory purpose of the master plan is that land use regulation, because you're not allowed to, put it very simple, you're not allowed to have zoning, you know, because you can't regulate people's use of land unless it is furthering some broader community vision. So the master plan is that broader community vision. That's what it is at its heart. And the master plan will a lot of times incorporate a lot of other things here. That said, this document jumps right into the meat of what are we going to do next? What are our big work items, right? Which, you know, is pointed out, this document, you guys are moving forward over the 5 years. This document are going to do all sorts of different taking directions to maybe the vision, but this is gives you your starting point. The master plan, I suppose, in those terms, is actually supposed to be the end point. But this is where we want to get them. This is taking, okay, how, what are the things we
Okay, a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I see all these categories and all these tasks and all these things, all these different things that you do. For future development, future, to accommodate future growth, if you will. But I don't see anything that has the effect of putting on the brakes if we want to. Can we stop? Can we stop doing all this?
Yeah.
It's a hypothetical question, but seriously, I mean, it's really not. Can we stop? Do we have to
March
bump forward?
Well, so I guess depends, I guess, how you're asking, because, this lays out, hey, these are the things to do over the next 5 years. And if you were to just stop it at some point, you wouldn't fulfill the full, you wouldn't achieve what.
But what if we want it to take longer?
And that's also true. There's a number of things in here we
You
talk
mean this
about.
plan too?
Yeah.
Stop it? Not stop everything. I'm saying,
Sorry, because I was going to get to the other part of the big question, which is the actual, which is like, how much does the township want to grow?
Is that what you mean, Tim?
partly.
Yeah, and right now, I think that's pretty well articulated in the master plan. This has a couple of spots where we're talking about tweaks, but I don't think this is trying to override the master plan at all. And where the master plan says, we have a pretty hard line at Bushwick, in which we say on one side of this line, we're okay with growth, on the other, we're not. And again, it has a couple spots where it takes maybe the overall physical development thing, you have a vision. And this doesn't change.
Can we emphasize that we want to, there's got to be language like to prioritize preservation of Cascade's quaint character and residential feel. If we don't,
And I believe that's in here, but if it's not in here strongly enough, then you can.
I think it should be a little stronger. Basically, like, we're part of a greater Grand Rapids area, but what people like about here is that we're a safe residential green community. And Tommy's Car Wash is about as close as Tommy's Car Wash needs to get to what we consider both the lower end of the village area.
Sure.
I think it's a little closer.
And that's where some of these tasks go, because you're gonna have, there's a few states, the planning commission, the DDA, define what these areas are supposed to be and take action to make that happen, rather than letting letting the door open and hoping, okay, well, we know what we want it to be, but something else might happen, right? And so that some of the things in here are using some of your planning and zoning development tools to further what it is you guys want and stop what you don't. I would also point out what we've got actually in this priority that we were talking about the wording of, that talks about places in the township where you might acquire or otherwise preserve land. I think that's very important. But the other thing about that is I think it's active. You're gonna have to do that actively. You're gonna have to figure out what land is that? How are we preserving it? What tools are we
Cascade the way
using?
we want it, quiet and passive and residential, we have to actively do things, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot of
Maybe
action.
that's the one sentence answer. There are a lot of things that you have to do, because if you're passive at the township government level, then whatever the private sector needs, whatever the market is driving, is just gonna happen.
Right?
And you're gonna have, you don't fear it. Then, you know,
So for example, my husband and I moved out here almost 4 decades ago. And I used to joke it was city enough for me and country enough for him. But it was, he grew up, and 28th Street really was a farm. And so it's, you know, of course, it's gotten more of everything. So literally, if somebody wants to keep that setting, they literally have to keep moving further out. Right? Because
that's
things are going to develop.
Developers are gonna wanna make money, and they make money in places like these.
I think maybe what Sue is, I don't know, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but when you put the time frame on it, Chris, I think that's what she was talking about. What if, you know, parks were priority, but what if we felt that there should be less, I'm just using this for example, consideration of the southeast portion of the township, but we couldn't do that in less than a year. What if, I mean, is that what you're talking about, kind of, when you say, I guess the timeframes I think are good because it holds us to something, but what if we can't accomplish that in less than a year? Maybe we feel there's reason that a delay looking at southeast area, or there isn't available space or something like that.
well, if we feel that today, then let's change it and make it more realistic time. If you guys feel that in a year, then I think that's fine, because you still are on, call it the roadmap, right? Still on the road.
I think it's important to find the right space.
Yeah.
Not to rush to find this thing, period, in less than a year, but to find a right space.
And I will say on this one, the Parks Committee is underway in developing that acquisition template already. So you're right, if you're talking about, hey, we've identified a piece of the township that we really want to work hard at, what we might look at for parks and preservation, and that might take longer, because we don't want to pick them off the spot.
Well, I'll give you an example. Did you look at the prior strategic plan when you put this one together?
Yeah, but at the beginning process.
So we bought a piece of land on the Thornapple, and it's been talked about at several board meetings, because then we thought we could expand our footprint from Castle Park down to there and make a little pocket park. And we've owned it for quite some time, and it's still vacant. So there's an example of, you know, we did something based on the old plan, and as things have turned, we haven't been able to acquire other parcels, so it's sitting there vacant. And whether we keep it or sell it, we don't. I mean, we talked about that.
We're being criticized either way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's what I'm referring to. We acted on it in the time frame because it was available at the right price at the right time, and it's sat there.
this isn't a hard line, this is like, this is the more structural help us move forward. So for example, our park plan that we're redoing now, under Steve Peterson, when he was on the Parks Committee, they met 4 times a year. Our parks plan was over 2 years overdue, like expired. And the previous plan that I know is required, it had lists of goals and things, and it estimated what our population growth would be. One, we surpassed our own, we surpassed the numbers, the estimates as far as Cascade population, and we didn't do anything on the plan that we paid for. So this isn't hard and fast 5-10 years in those countries, but this is like more specific. In some ways, I agree with Temporary, your comments, but this is because Cascade's only growing, the land is less and less, to help us do stuff.
That was only an example of, I just picked it up because we're on 3.1.
Yeah.
So I asked that, and I didn't know whether that was what Sue was referring to when she said, can we slow down if we decide it's going to be more than a year?
I will say on that particular issue, and we can make this clearer, even make it that prior to that 3.3, that if you run your existing land, through the template the Parks Committee is working on, then you'll get the answer whether you hold your property like that. Like, yes, it is, that it's on the river, the answer is hold it. And even if you never build a park there, you also get least you have to do that. Which this also envisions too, that there will be land in township that's preserved, which you won't put a lot of active amenities or investment into, you'll make sure it's not developed, or, number one, make sure it's not developed, and then all the parks, so that being parks being separate.
So I think it makes it too comfortable. The key is, no,
Not just about me, but
I know, but
I don't think enough putting on the brake.
you and everybody else, is priority 3 says, preserve natural features for sustainability and natural character. And I think that's the point. I mean, we'd have to have a 100-hour meeting if we were gonna try to divide township parcel by parcel and say, this one should be green space, this one is developable. Again, we're trying to just put together a strategic plan. And I think priority 3 summarizes what Sue is saying, is preserve natural features for sustainability and natural character.
So maybe an
Actually,
overall,
all you need to do is have a 2 hours meeting, but not part of this.
exactly.
Right.
And maybe that, what Sue said, is, that our overall goal is to maintain Cascade's character with a residential, naturally beautiful community with a village, more of a village type feel. Maybe that can be our overall, like an umbrella statement. Because all of this is essentially what that's sort of trying to do. Green and
So we have,
Unrivaled.
It's very broad and it has a phrase, execute the desires of residents. If we understand the desires of residents to be maintain the natural beauty and community character of Cascade, I would be adding that to that statement.
is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I don't know where you're at.
Sorry, it's on Roman numeral 2, it's actually in the same page of the acknowledgement. At the top, it says Cascade commits provides a resource, staffing, and organizational structure to execute the desires of residents. It doesn't say what the desires of residents are, and we totally add a clause that's broad.
Okay, so when you think about the people that responded to the survey, and they said they wanted this, so I want this, I want this, I want, they're not thinking at all in terms of a timeline. Like what we're required to do in terms of the master plan, the 10-year thing. And then, like you said, we want to steer the car so we get where we want to go. That's things people want, but again, they have no concept of the timeline that we're going to work in. I guess I feel like throughout this document, and I went over quite a bit too, I just feel like I'd like, as we were just saying, a little bit more of a sense of that preservation, putting the brakes on, slowing things down. Because we can't do it, but we don't have to do it in 5 years or 2 years. So I don't know how you incorporate that into the document, but if people are moving to Cascade because it's country-like or village or green or whatever, there's really not wrong.
Well, you're asking for controlled growth with preserving natural features for sustainability and natural character.
Exactly. Like, that needs to be a more mission.
Yeah,
Right, that's where
like
she-
the vague economic development statements, like
Priority.
growth, encourage growth.
Say it again, Greg?
All those vague economic statements where you hear about, encourage growth, well, what kinds of growth?
Right.
We've got growth coming out of our ears. That doesn't really help us. Maybe we don't need to grow at 20% every 5 years. But other communities might need that. We don't.
You don't want to be rental.
You want to keep up your property value.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a few things you could do that are, because I think all these ideas are.
Yeah,
The reason parks and trails are first in here is because that's what residents says their highest priority. Right? Which goes to the preservation thing, but also goes to, I want to play on it, right? And we can go, I'm not going to be able to include it because that's priority number 1, right? Because existing parks need to be. So my point is that it feels like something like that's buried because you're trying to raise to the front of the residents.
And the other thing too, like, for example, so overwhelmingly people want a safe place, they want speeding to stop, which everyone just needs to slow down and realize that you can't, there's no magic wand. But so it was just interesting that it was pretty across the board, maintain a focus on green space preservation, and then that village area to more of a walkable, quaint, local area. But the structure is important because we have a lot of money and they need help. Professional help.
I also don't think there's a whole lot to do about 20th Street. Road. Who said it at one meeting last year? The 2 5-lane roads running through our township, not in a village, nothing you can do about that.
But when our attorney at one point said, Cascade can do so much, can require so much more of developers, or there's so many more tools that they're not taking advantage of. That we could be using.
And the DDA is the task with working on it. So that, and there are, I would say there are things that can be done. The road commission's not interested in doing them, and it would make it take longer to get them. The car would be going.
Right.
There's only so many areas in the abstract.
Yeah,
for
so
example,
like, you know.
we put up, I asked them to schedule a meeting with the road commission after I talked to one of them at one of those focus groups about a pedestrian biker bridge over the extension over the Thornapple. So I talked to them at one of those meetings, you were at that one. I had them set up a meeting, totally doable, way less expensive, I mean, very cheap compared to other plans. And it was like, this has just never been addressed before, we're gonna have it done, it's gonna be it's doing something. So a pedestrian biker bridge is a no-brainer, everybody wants it, it's in the heart of the village. And I was just amazed how easy it was.
Well, but to the road commission's defense in the past,
I know, it's
and
the road commission.
I know, and us too. We had approached the road commission in the past. 7, 8 years ago, they wouldn't let us hang things hardly off the bridge at the time. They softened their stance in terms of walkability, biking, where 10 years ago, they wanted to widen roads and speed up the
Yeah.
traffic.
Yeah.
And we asked them several years ago if we could put a path on the bridge. They said, absolutely not.
This
Absolutely
is
not.
gonna be making it wider, and I know
Right.
some of the things in fact are really pretty, but had like a median plan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Didn't ask about
So,
that.
but again, they've softened up again on putting in traffic calming things. They didn't want to do that before. So we're trying to, they're seeing the light in terms of being more walkable, more community, bikeable, et cetera.
They've been great the few times I've seen them, I just don't know how much we've actually tried to do.
So that is moving forward then, widening that bridge to like they want.
But maybe,
They've given us,
but
So they're working on engineering or super preliminary engineering for it, just what it would cost and what it would look like.
Is it,
So progress. I
do
just want to
you
make sure
know-
this reflects the progress.
do you know if they're talking, or do you know if they're thinking like an extra bridge on the other side?
we're gonna give like 3 options, it could be that,
Like
or
the road and something else over here?
choices.
well, let's get back to the plan, okay?
So do you want to, right, so we're gonna be here at 12 hours.
Right,
No.
exactly.
Do you want to? I want to go through all your points now, I thought they
The
were.
real, I can go real fast.
Okay.
So on page, there's some of just simple wordsmithing. Page 3, 4-1, says funding opportunities. That kind of sounds kind of funny. We didn't have a $10.4 million funding opportunity last night for the fire station. We had a fire funding requirement.
Which part, where are you at?
Page 3, tab 4-1. We keep using the word funding opportunity. I think it's funding requirement. Let's be clear.
What page is it on the right?
Page 3,
Going on this,
Great.
page 3.
oh, okay, thanks.
Page 3, tab 4-1. And we use it throughout. We call them funding opportunities. They're not they're requirements. If we're going to do these things, we're going to be required to look funding. It's just a simple
Page,
3, 4-1.
establish and adopt bylaws.
No.
Yeah.
That's right. Keep going, keep going.
And utilize the newly created package committee to identify funding opportunities.
I think
Oh,
funding
that should
requirements,
be requirement,
Why?
that word.
Why?
because they're requirements.
But here's one thing. Cascade, what keeps coming up at the park level is that a lot of things that are done in communities are done with, family or business sponsorship. So requirements, like, there's a lot more public-private cooperation. And so they get in retail with.
We're going to require.
They want to know how much it's gonna cost to do these things.
Okay.
That's what he means, I believe.
I think to both of them, there's both of them, right? So you're gonna have to identify what the funding requirements are, right? So you're gonna have to identify this project requires $1 million to do. But then you also need to identify the opportunities. The opportunities to fund this include $500,000 grants, or it's going to come from the general fund.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Yeah.
So why don't we just add opportunities and requirements?
Okay.
Because we want
Right.
private money.
That's why I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now that I explained that, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
All right, that sounds great.
The next one is just tab 4-2. We multiple times say represent the diversity in the township. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of diversity as we normally think of it. I think what we meant is represent various geographies in the township.
Yeah, I think that's, the clearest pathway you have, right? Because you're right, you're not, there are a lot of types of houses you probably won't find in the township, but you can certainly make sure that not everyone is from the same neighborhood.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, the geographic diversity concept.
That's fine.
And populate, a point. Word a point,
Yeah,
or select, I guess.
a point makes sense. From various geographies or with geographical diversity, that's fine.
And I agree with that, I see what they're saying, it just gets a little tricky because as the person who's in charge of making the point and then you guys are approving it, you gotta go with who you got at the time and I'd rather have someone good than someone who lives in a certain area. But the point, expertise, but the point is, well, maybe.
Well, we could think, if you can also say the geographic and knowledge base diversity.
Yeah, and I think we ought to not say I put the word if when feasible, because we're not mandating like city wards. Like we aren't dividing the township into wards and saying we have to have individual, one from each ward, we have to have 7 township board members, each from a different ward. That's not what we're saying. So I think it's if when feasible, it just kind of makes it that we aren't breaking the township up.
And then so we'll word, that idea comes up a lot, right? This comes up with like every board and commission. So we'll just make sure we word all of those that way. Appoint resident to the Parks Committee and Pathways Committee for the Planning Commission, who represent the geographic and knowledge-based diversity of the township.
Perfect. On the next one, on page 4, the top of page 4, it says hire additional township staff, and I think what we want to talk about is explore hiring additional township staff. And on page 27, you do use the word explore hiring. And it just doesn't make it a demonstrative. Boom. We're gonna hire. That was pretty simple.
Yeah.
Page 6 on 4-3, it's the same. Page 6, 4-3. I'm sorry, page 4, 4-3. I'm sorry, page 4, 4-3. That's to hire additional township staff. And we're going to change that to explore hiring. And then on the land use and economic development,
That's on page 6. Next one on the other.
yeah, next page 6 is the next one. Land use priority 1. That gets back to populate boards and committees with residents who represent diversity. Same change. Same change we just made. The geographical.
And,
The very top, of priority 1, Chris. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, I was trying to, go back to what was that when we came for that part 4-2. So then, land use priority 1 was.
and from,
Change the graph on park.
change the what?
The graph.
His golf course was on there.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. That's a good point.
that we pointed out before.
The one thing that keeps coming out of the Parks Committee is, your changes are great. I agree with it, but it's needed. We have no millage, no structure at the Parks Committee. It's Brian sitting there, our planner who's got a full plate, and it keeps, the Parks Committee's got really good people on it, and internally at the township, we don't have staff do it. We didn't bring in Steve, I don't think. So our staffing should reflect the priorities of the resident, and right now I don't think it does. Because there's a void in the parks, land use, all that kind of stuff. There's nobody there to handle it.
Yeah, I think this is directing you guys to have that discussion.
I'm just saying we should have a discussion because we got a priority, we got nobody to do it.
I would also add a yellow block to your latest acquisition.
The penny first.
Yeah, where is that?
It's like Spalding and Burton.
I'll send you the map of it, so you can plug in.
Just one other quick thing on page 6, task 1-2. Do we want to specifically point out if there's a point, one planning commissioner that lives east of Buttrick and south of I-96? Why are we specifying just that and no other place?
It was called out because there's a name there.
But
Yeah,
Yes, I think I was going to say, consider appointing when feasible, people from different geographical areas.
I would even, yeah, I don't know that. I was just, I would go monitor the neighborhood or geographic location of planning commissioner home and take that into account.
I just think.
Prioritize appointing commissioners that represent the geographic diversity of the township.
Yeah, use that word, same word here.
I don't see how you can do that, so.
You dare try to, that's why we prioritize.
Well, that's why I use the word consider.
You've got two candidates, one of them lives 2 doors down from the current planning commissioner, the other lives at the township.
Yeah, but I think you're walking on slippery slope then, because what you're saying is, just because they live next to each other doesn't mean they're not qualified. Just because somebody lives on south of, doesn't mean that they are qualified.
Equal quality. We could also include something like that, but I think the word mechanical.
I think the word mechanical is just. So let me jump to task priority 2, page 6. Priority 2, task 2-1. Task 2-1. This is to consider the revision of inefficiencies in the zoning process. We just leave this very nebulous. I think what we want to say is instruct the planning director and zoning administrator to make written recommendations to the planning commission as to possible inefficiencies in zoning, including, and I've written that out for you.
Is this the route, so this came from the planning commission, right?
This is actually under process already. This is part of what you guys
Brownfield
adopted last night.
Right.
So in that, there's a process because this is already written in our zoning ordinance, so the committee recommended revising what are the minor things that staff can approve with report to the planning commission, and what are the things that the planning commission has to approve.
Yeah, those should match.
What about that, is this the big picture priority 2? Big like in blue letters, ensure the zoning processes are clear, efficient, and promote both economic development and township planning goals. I don't want to have opposite economic development. What if we ensure that and just take out that both economic development and just say township planning goals, because that could include that.
Yeah, take what's wrong with that.
It's just that
The,
township planning goals.
yeah, the dichotomy from experience with this stuff is that you said the roundtable committee and you guys come up with these things that can be moved to planning, which is great. Sometimes communities will do that. And it'll just be because, well, we want to get things in and out faster. Well, I'm hearing from you guys, that there are some things you don't want to see happen, and if they go, I'm not saying anything about Brian, but they go Brian's desk, Brian includes him, that's more than that. And you go, oh, how did that happen? Right? So that's where I think it makes sense to kind of encompass economic development within township planning goals in case you don't want economic development of a particular piece of property. But also, the other question I have though is, especially Ben, should we make changes here based on what they just did, or is it still good to go?
I can send you a copy of what they're recommending because it's in that plan.
So we'll revise this to match what was.
Right, that would, after all that work they did, that would be really good to make those parallel.
Yeah. And then this is a good example of what we were talking about earlier, though, that, hey, these things are happening. Right?
But in our processes today, the reason I wanted to add at the bottom, I put it at the bottom to add, following review by the planning commission, final recommendations must be approved by the board, just so people understand that's the process.
Yep.
And the board is ultimately responsible. And I put that in that wording there under page 6, task 2-1.
Well, I think if anything, we want more oversight instead of less.
Right, and that's what that does.
Last night, right?
Well, I guess, just to walk that back though, there are things that the planning commission is allowed to approve that don't have to come to the township board.
Right.
In fact, there's more things that the township or that the planning commission can approve than things that have to go to the
But
township.
doesn't a zoning change have to go to the board?
So the zoning change itself would have to. yes.
Right, and that's what this one,
Okay.
this one refers to inefficiencies in zoning including.
But it's processes.
All right.
Well, no, but I think, no, it runs. I think that it should say that the board has final approval over these changes, which you guys are going to have.
Right.
Or already did, or the changes the planning commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Making, and that is always the case, that's state law. So, you should make it clear that it can't just happen because of the planning commission or staff, it must come. to the board.
Right.
And then I'll make sure this reflects what the planning commission is.
Are you on page 3, Tom?
On page 7. I just wanted this point of discussion, you know, to be just like a dead horse, but page 7 attached, the last bullet point. The last bullet point says, allow the planning director and zoning administrator the authority to review and approve temporary uses. We had a lot of discussions about, a lot of consternation the last year and a half about not giving all that authority to a planning director or zoning administrator. So I just thought, so to say, allow the planning director and zoning administrator with review by the township manager, the authority to review. Because there has to be some kind of oversight. We complained the last year and a half that we gave too much authority to a planning director and other people. So with no oversight, so if we just added with review by the township manager, it kind of provides some oversight. Because the township manager then has to report to the board.
Was that particular process discussed by the planning commission in the process review?
So the discussion wasn't part of the recommendations committee that came out, but a conversation that the planning commission has been having is related to, so when the pandemic was going on and all of the places wanted to have outdoor seating, right? So the planning commission at that time, maybe, a special process at the time where there could be administrative approval of outdoor seating based on as long as they met all the criteria, right? So when the pandemic was over, the planning commission really been having a conversation about, well, should we make this a permanent process? Or should we go back to, just before this, review on outdoor seating, you had to come to the planning commission, it could be a long drawn out process. So they talked about that. I don't think there's been a resolution at this point. I think they're still evaluating it. But that has been on their document.
So if you go to the middle of page 3 of my notes, I had right in there, to streamline processes, allow the planning director and zoning administrator the authority to review and approve temporary uses with review by the township manager. Any questionable temporary use should be reviewed and approved by the ZBA, which is the process today, the zoning board of appeals. We just recommended at Tuesday night at the zoning board to take some temporary uses and just give the zoning administrator the ability to do it. For example, temporary construction, storage, like at Myers and Target. Why do we have to pay $500 every time they want one of those? We should just, the zoning administrator should just be able to approve something like that without having to go to the DBA, without the applicant having to pay $500. But it should be reviewed by the township manager.
And I think it needs to follow the same process that we just talked about with, site plan changes, right? So there should be something in the zoning ordinance that says specifically, we can't just say questionable zoning temporary uses need to go to ZBA. There needs to be a defining as to either has to define what temporary uses can be approved administratively, or it has to define what temporary uses have to come to the ZBA. We can't keep the term questionable in there and then leave it to, me and Brian and Madison or whoever's in those chairs sitting around trying to figure out if we think this is a questionable temporary.
And then we second guess Monday morning, quarterback to us.
There is, not to get too much in the weeds on this, but there are some communities where they have a process that's for a number of things that's administrative like that. maybe that's another option. Absolutely.
Good idea.
But, it's real simple, one word, on page 7, priority 3, amend the zoning ordinance, I think we should say review the ordinance, the zoning ordinance. Because we aren't necessarily gonna amend it, but we are gonna review.
For possible amendments.
Review the zoning ordinance to ensure it reflects township priorities and market reality. Yeah, just review, rather than amend says we are absolutely gonna do this, and I think we wanna just change that. Regarding the lien zoning audit, in front of task 3-1, if we want to specify who's going to do that, I would just suggest instruct the planning director and zoning administrator to conduct a lien zoning audit.
But I want to know about that, like we're the elected officials. I
Right.
wanna have-
Right. It says instruct the planning director, means the board instructs.
Yeah, I just want to be involved in it.
Right.
Part of the thing, so this is really good, but a process that flushed a lot of good ideas out and really made what people want priorities clear. But there's also the potential, like, the people that sit on those committees and commissions are appointed, they're not accountable to anybody, which, I mean, ultimately it's the board that's elected.
Right. And at the bottom of that, I added the township board, who are elected officials, should have the final authority.
Oh, yes, and I'm not, sorry, I was just saying that it's like the process itself, like, I could see how bureaucracies take a life of their own because
So you can see, Chris, in my document. what it was. I don't want to have this go till midnight. My only question is on page 8-3-2. I like architectural standards in the Cascade Village, architectural standards along 20th Street. Is the intent being, I mean, who's going to define those standards? Is that going to be for the board and the planning commission, et cetera, to determine with maybe a consultant or?
Yeah, that would be another zoning amendment process, but it would require sort of specialized architectural, so someone who could describe what it is you best look for architecturally in words and in diagrams that can clearly be enforced.
have you done that before?
Yeah.
Have you seen it done well?
Yeah, I mean, I am not the guy for that personally, but McKenna has been.
And have they done it in a way that's not overly controversial or?
Yeah, I think you really, that process starts with defining what it is you want the buildings to look like. And then you back that into an architect who can describe that in terms of cornices and windows and things of that nature that are objective and can be enforced as zoning, rather than enforced as I like this, I don't like that, which is where you get into issues, right? So it's definitely a doable thing. Like I said, I'm not an architect. I have a particular guy that I can bring in for us, something like that, that is an architect. Do this. We just finished this up in Granville. It's a lot of like, this is X feet, this is X feet. These are your color options. And, or you don't have to go that far, but you can sometimes people are really, some communities say, like, this is the look we want. And, you know, I don't care if that's not the dollar corporate standard, you either give us the look we want or you don't build it. If that's the attitude you guys want to have, then great. And if it's not, just don't. It is something you can't do. Technically possible. Right.
There's kind of that, what do you guys think about the Thorn Hills, like the road by DMW? It goes to the DMW. What is that, where Tommy's car wash is right on the corner?
Yeah, it's
Down,
just a
little-
down the other, yeah.
Outside of like,
If you're kind of making like a natural barrier, stopping the 28th Street sprawl, not that it's not even helpful, but you don't want to live right next to it. Amen.
It's just so red.
Well, let me go to page 9, tab 4-2. This is my question is, it says amend the future land use map to include a designation suitable for establishing the upper village and lower village. I don't know what that means. So does that mean establish criteria for structures and uses in the upper village and lower village areas and include these criteria in the future land use map?
step before that. Because utilization map, you guys know, is an element of 10-year map, right? And it's by law required to tie directly to your zone. It doesn't necessarily be like a one-for-one thing. If you have a future land use category that ties to more than one zoning district, or multiple future land use categories, or one zoning district, there has to be a connection. And because we're saying we have a vision for the upper village and vision for the lower village that we want to develop, it makes sense to me if, and when you guys do a master plan update, if those two things should be then separate with broad goals of what they are. Then the next step is what we just described. And that's something the DDA task is working on.
Well, I'm not saying what the criteria are, I'm saying establish criteria for structures and uses, because I didn't know what designation suitable for establishing the upper village map.
And I can say, we can say something like you just said about the vision for structures and uses in this area.
Yeah, and what you're saying is establish a vision, or establish some criteria, because just saying designation suitable for what?
How did those apartments, this was before my time here as supervisor, those apartments behind Culver's and Nakatawa Bank that sprang up all the time, in my mind, that's like what we don't want to happen. I think those look terrible there. And they're important in other areas, but I think that's an area you don't, and they don't even have public access directly. They have to go on a little private road on that high density housing. I never understood how, I thought that was, I'm surprised that Cascade allowed that. Surprised in a bad way. I've never heard the story behind it. Anything, Ben?
I think it was zoned
They
for it,
applied and they met all the requirements.
right?
And did the township sell that developer that property? They bought it at a tax sale or something?
They bought it from another private entity.
Was it that threefold involvement?
I have no idea how they bought it, but no, the township doesn't. Even if they bought it at tax sale, the township doesn't have anything to do with that.
No, but did the township ever own that property? I think someone had mentioned it on, I heard that it did at one point.
At one time, they wanted to have an access road down past the fire station to Tornills. And Township stopped that, and I kind of like want to understand that where they came from that development. It's like kind of a twin to the one behind Walmart.
Yeah, it looks terrible. I just think it's what we don't want.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, so that begs the question, just because you can do it, you meet the requirements, should you?
No, not there. It looks terrible.
Well, and then the problem is what our
Township has to change.
yeah,
But then, but that's,
yeah.
and then what,
We get back to this.
yeah, but it's also important that we talk, I mean, they're just, their goal is to make things happen so that that kind of stuff doesn't keep happening in Cascade. Because as a supervisor, I've gotten like 4 calls from, the same thing, that same development that goes behind Walmart. Now that, what do you call the little private street that, Robinson Dental's going on, it's right behind,
27th Street.
The
I call it
27th
27th Street.
behind.
It's really not, but it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Multiple car accidents, so far none of them fatal, but a bunch of business owners are super concerned. It's a private street. It's a private street, so now you've got people cutting to Walmart, those apartments, now we've got a big giant dental office going up there. Road Commission has no authority over it. Again, lack of planning at the township level. What were we doing? So now we've got, and they're like, you're gonna save someone's life, thank you so much, but we can't really touch it because it's a private development and it's within our.
Wait, that's not a private street, is it? Is that a private street?
Yeah, it's also Fell Street.
So we're allowing all this growth and development on this little dinky street with a 1 stop sign, it's not safe. So, yes, you can get back to the plan, but it's important, I'm frustrated with the lack of planning in
But
Cascade.
that's what we're doing here, because you gotta remember, Grace, we can't, if you wanna sell your house, we can't tell you, no, you can't sell your house.
I get it, Tom.
I know, and that's, and so the point is, if people are fitting within what is legal at that time, we have to allow it. Now, if we change the zoning now, and say, we don't want this in these specific areas, we can do that.
I
but-
just think it's odd that it's just a lack of oversight and long-term thinking. I realize Steve Peterson's gone, but.
But that's why we're doing these things now.
This is specifically directing me to the broad point of, if things are happening because they meet the requirements, which one you're not allowed to say no, but you don't like them, you need to change the requirements.
Yep.
Right.
That is an overarching point.
I mean, I personally don't like some of the buildings on 28th Street. Other people may.
No, I
Who
don't
decides,
disagree,
you know?
but I think just generally our posture has been way too reactive and not proactive enough, so that's just.
And that's why we're working on this.
How do you change the requirement then? Is that at the zoning board level?
Yeah, that, no, it's the planning commission recommendation, you guys changing the zone.
Exactly what we went through last week.
Okay.
Well, another one that all fits in with this is task 4-3 on page 9. We've already approached that. I think it's not appropriate to specify Cascade Road and Whitneyville areas as mixed use.
Make it 100%.
I think that should go, I hearing the opposition. to that.
Yeah, strong, that was like a,
Ambivalent, but opposition.
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
strike that.
Leave out the example.
yeah. And I would just end the sentence at mixed use hamlets right there and then just, and then, yeah, I think, yeah, specifying that area just isn't appropriate. On page 11, I would just suggest, instead of saying update the township plan, let's say evaluate the township plan. We may update it, we may not, we may modify it.
You guys like it? The little waterfall dam thing with.
I don't-
Well, I think it's from the 70s or 80s, it's kind of outdated, but it's a very well-established brand. It's very well known. I don't know how costly to change.
But I just think,
But
saying
it's-
evaluate, it doesn't say we're definitely gonna do it, it says evaluate.
Trustee Norton?
I'm going back to the piece here. I would think that you change the zoning to say that the department complexes have to be on public roads, not private roads.
I don't understand how that's
Probably
allowed.
take some of that out. Please convey those private roads.
I just can't believe that just went through without any type of variance or, I mean, just, that's a bad zoning ordinance, that's what we got. That's a, and I haven't gotten a full question back yet. We've got that, what's it, 27th Street? Multiple accidents. No, literally, I asked them the concerns to Maddie or Madison and Brian and you, because it's an unsafe private intersection. Don't we have the ability, we're allowing extensive development, so the same little dinky road with the same one stop sign on a four-way intersection. Don't we have something that takes into account growth and allows us to like ensure that that same road is safe when the circumstances
Maybe
can?
that's a topic we should bring up to the board,
But I haven't heard that.
but I would like to get I mean, just only I'm respecting everybody's time if we've got an hour.
How does that, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, well, maybe.
We can't, Tom, I'm not going to start with an 11 page, space type document, but.
I know, if I gave it ahead of time, so you would all be documented.
Go ahead, Ms. President, I'll continue.
No, I just want to say, is that okay to say evaluate the township?
Yeah, I think it's good, but I think we should evaluate it.
Oh, I do too, that's why. I said-
Throwing out the commentary.
On page 12, again, task 1-2, it's that same thing about diversity. Just keep consistent. Diversity, priority one is just, you know, the same language. Same thing on task 1-2, it's, you know,
If that, our DDA statute is so specific as far as who can be appointed and from what areas, there's no underserved area, they're all, it's like such a tiny little,
right, it's a very finite area.
I don't think it needs to be,
We could even potentially cut that.
I would cut it.
Because unlike the other boards where we're talking about township, obviously, that you can draw from.
And it's very limited.
Yeah, now you have a bigger area than most communities.
I cross it out.
For DDA, we originated to rehabilitate downtown. That's the whole point of DDA in the first place. And that, was that because of massive change, like sucking the kind of like refilling the downtowns and whenever they were doing it, like the change and
Yeah, that's.
urban development. You guys think it's kind of ironic that our DDA is like focusing on like Walmart and Myers? I mean,
There are DDAs that are more like yours, where the point is to try to create a village that didn't previously exist. That does happen as well. Every community is entitled to create a DDA. So whether you have to work downtown or not, there are some criteria, but
Oh, I just been saying, I think that the our economic development director doesn't understand that the reason we have engagement priority. That Walmart's not the same as a local store as far as CPA.
So getting in,
Like they'll sit together and have these conversations.
and that whole development thing then, as you talked about, if you go to page 13, the very top of the page, task 3-2, the second bullet point, where the second bullet point says allow private development in the green space. My whole point was that Cascade's highest priority when we did the survey was natural scenery. So though the village area is the place you might want to promote development, do we really want to promote private development in the green space around the library? We really, I don't think we do. I think we want to take that, remove that out, because I don't think.
Did we have them? I don't remember having that conversation. I could be wrong.
we talked, so this is what we talked about advisory committee. When one of the discussions we had is what is the village, right? And we kind of came out with a two-pronged thing. We have Cascade Road near the river, and we call that the lower village, right? Bottom of the hill. You also have the library here, which is a natural gathering place for people, great facilities, public facility, and you have businesses in the immediate vicinity there. I know those primarily. So there's an opportunity for that to be a village. So the thought was we kind of have two nodes, and creating our village really should include both of those. The thought of the advisory committee, the reason the language got in there was, all right, so the library is surrounded on three sides by green space. You could keep green space, you keep it in that, that wooded environment while spinning off some of the green space, like maybe the park closest to 28th Street, or and skip to the down Thornbrook, there's still just like grass. Now, ultimately, this is you guys' decision, and if you do not want to pursue that idea, we should remove it. So if that's a hard no from the board, then that's fine.
I think if you're green, they.
Yeah, I just.
And that's not to go against what the Friends of the Library, that will propose to their pavilion.
Well, that goes through the design program and enhanced part, right?
Here's
It's
a
the
brilliant.
key thing, it's the allow private development part.
Was that not, is it private?
No, it's the library.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's not really private.
It's for the public, yeah.
Public property. Township.
Yep, so they want to do their little amphitheater, which I think is a great idea, but anything else where building a ground with cutting grass?
Well, no, they wanted a gazebo. I don't know how the amphitheater snuck back in there. Yeah.
Well, whatever the final plan, they're gazebo, amphitheater, whatever, something, but it's a very small dedicated area.
Got
If
it.
the green grass is there, I say let's keep mowing it. Let's not cut it off.
All right, let's. maybe roll it.
My only concern was if we're enhancing the library, creating more areas, or like
That's a great point.
farmer's market, we don't want to get rid of that property
Yeah.
to private development.
So that makes sense. So we changed the design program and enhanced the green space.
Right.
And get rid of any, even consider.
Green space around the library, to create that for village. I think it's just, at this point, let's not put it to the privately. So I like how you change that. On page 14, task 4-5. 4-5 also talks about implement the planned uses, which is for task 3-2. For the upper village and green space surrounding the library, including programming and recreational upgrades, as well as the potential sale of a portion for development. I take that out,
110%.
because that's just what we just said. So take out the as well as potential sale.
Someone get hold of your computer, Chris?
I mean, it came up as a focus group, so ultimately, you guys, it's your call. So I'm just hearing that, we had the words consider and potential there, but I'm hearing that's not even an option.
Real simple.
Thank you for doing that.
It'll take 15 seconds. Page 14 at 5-1. I don't know what 5-1 development is definitive list of large area employers. Why don't you take a large area? I don't know what large area means. If we wanted a list of employers, we don't want to just specify Meijer and Target and Costco.
This is huge, though. Yes, take a large area, and this is the fantastic.
wherever it occurs.
Yeah, I think we're trying to say the parks is local employers, like, we said local businesses.
We use that in a couple different spots. I would just take wherever that, search on large area, and just remove those. Page 15, priority 7. Ensure, they want to evaluate sufficient resources for staffing. We're not, ensure says we're going to guarantee, and we can't always guarantee that we're going to hire staff. And because in 7-1, you say assess, which is correct. I think that's the correct word, assess. So ensure and assess kind of conflict. So evaluate and assess, but I think it's going to look better.
We don't have that right now.
Yeah.
We don't have any, but the big priorities that every resident, the overwhelming consensus was prioritize parks, green space,
Yep.
residential field. We don't have any staff member for that. So the parks committee is like, got their foot on the gas and they're stuck in first gear. The same thing for the DDA, the next highest priority or equal, number one overwhelming resident desire was is focusing on creating more of a village, local, pedestrian, bicycle-friendly gathering area, village tipping. We don't have a single staff member with those qualifications. It's super frustrating as a supervisor who went through this year process, and we don't have, those are the two highest priorities of the community, and we don't have one staff member who has expertise in that area. It's very frustrating. Then I'm going to make eye contact with you.
But and I would just say on page 17 and 20 also, instead of saying ensure, I think we want to evaluate.
I think ensure is the word. It's our job. It's the overwhelming priorities of the community, and in the two areas that residents find the most important, we don't have a single staff member with those qualifications. Steve Peterson didn't have those qualifications when he was here, and our economic development director doesn't have those qualifications. And it's like you're staring. Ensure is the word.
Because if we have to say ensure, then that means
We got to do it.
the financial as well means that we might have to raise taxes.
Well, the opposite is continuing with keeping someone having someone who doesn't have the skills, and we've got taxpayer funds, so let's find somebody who can just ensure that we have capable staff.
I'm good with it as long as that if we have to ensure financial,
Ignored.
it means we might need to also raise taxes, which I'm not against.
No, we got we got to
I think
manage.
in almost all parts of the law, it says it's just the board's responsibility to ensure.
You don't get to sit in a well-paid position and not have the qualifications for it when that's the community's highest priority. It's really frustrating to go to meetings on the DDA and the Parks Committee, and we're just staring.
I'm good with ensure then, as long as we're willing to commit to it. I'm good with it. I think everything from here, Chris, as we said, it's not just reflecting, and I wrote that out on my notes, Chris, page 6. Just on all the proposed action lists for each one, all the things that we just changed just have to be reflected through the rest of the document.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through every one, but.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Obviously, these things, they appear 3 times, they're worded the same.
And I documented those for you, and that's.
Yeah, I appreciate the legwork there.
I'm very thorough.
So we'll make sure that, that is reflected throughout, so that if people are using this document to, for instance, the DDA is going through their list, that their list is worded the same way to me.
Right.
So, hey, what are we doing in 1 year? Worded the same way. Okay.
When we talk about staffing and getting it's not going to take much. It's just those two areas we don't have anybody that's got those skills.
Yep, so the plan is, the board will adopt this at the next board meeting, and then it immediately becomes the overarching discussion for our 2023 budget process. So starting in September, the board will be getting back together for our board workshop, and whatever the priorities are in here should be driving that budget conversation. One of the Wednesdays in September.
Is the process then Chris makes the changes, gets them out back to the board as well as the public, so the public can look at them. And then we vote on the document?
So obviously it'll go up on our website, so the public can see it, as soon as we're ready.
Okay.
And if the next board meeting, they can change.
Oh, the next board meeting is the
14 and 28 are maybe they're.
Just 14 gives the public a lot of time to go through the document. It's probably more reasonable for your schedule as well as to give the public adequate time to, I mean, there's nothing really earth shattering of any changes. It's really, if they've gone through it, it's just taking all things like Cascade Road, Whitneyville development and selling portions of the library property, things like that that we,
Really, I think it's,
right.
So the question I have is like these things that we discussed in some detail with the front page, and then when you go into the task action list, then you're just gonna kind of rain down on that, right?
same change. Right. That's why the tasks are all, you know, denoted as Parks and Recreation, as 4-1, that way. It's supposed to be easy for the user of the document.
They cross-reference each
Makes
other.
it, makes it easier for us to make changes too. It's like, all right, so the request is a Parks and Recreation task 3-1. All right, we'll find every time that appears. And we'll change it.
This is fantastic. I just am very concerned as that election. So we have, this is entirely pretty much about parks, green space, and economic, because there's land use.
Land not used.
Land not used. And these two areas, we do not have staff members who can do either of these. So we need number one priority.
Sure.
And we've got one spot that we can't do it if we don't have anybody to do it. The parks committee can stare at each other. The DDA can continue to fund the bus. And do nothing else. Did our township engineer, community office,
We did make an offer. He said he would respond by Friday.
so that's what, tomorrow?
So he's getting married Saturday.
No big deal.
Two jobs for.
Hopefully he's in a good mood.
Right. Right, well, we don't.
We would like an invite to the wedding. Yes, right?
Sure.
Oh.
Yes, but wait, but does anybody else have any comments, questions at the board level?
I asked mine early, and you said you did look at the plan and you looked and the committee, because I wasn't part of it, so I don't know what the answer is. They considered what was in it, whether to retain or did they?
Yes, but the original impetus for what is in here came from that.
Okay,
So it wasn't, we did not take that document and then turn it into this one. That document was reviewed, but then ultimately we had the big initial survey, and then responses, and that was the built out.
okay. Was there anything in there that could be incorporated in the plan?
I think everything that, from my perspective, we incorporated everything that makes sense to incorporate. If you've got something specific from that document, it's not in here. Please let me
No,
know.
I think the open space, the property acquisitions for future expansion were great priorities in the plan before.
Yeah.
We're finally on the same page, Jim.
We didn't talk about, we don't have to tonight, but, financial structure, all that kind of stuff. How we're gonna fund things.
No, but that's for us to work out. The strategic plan doesn't apply.
No, but I'm saying the strategic plan starts at. Everything else, if that's a huge part.
Right, but that's the board. Right.
So how many responses Warren should include in the plan? I mean, like 1% said it or 10 people said it?
So the way the survey was structured, you know, it was, we gave the public with something to react to. The first very long,
Right.
and some things were very quickly stopped, but we did not, and we did, I think, if I remember correctly, we did have a longer category, we reviewed those, but it was, so I guess if one person said that something was a priority, then no, it's not, because that was so really low on the totem pole, like, how,
included if someone had to be,
Get it here,
So-
it's over.
yeah, exactly. Let me put it this way. So the 5 categories that are in, right?
Yeah.
Park, village, land use, the Cornapple River, and transportation, those were the 5 most popular things out of 25 things that we had.
Yeah.
Those were the 5 most popular. And then the survey has to do one of the other things that goes here as well. Those are the 5 most popular things. That's why.
I just want to say thanks to everybody also for meeting, because I know I drove a lot of this by some very particular specific things. But I just thought we all wanted, needed a chance to weigh in on the plan before, refine it a little bit. It's a great document, but thanks for.
And Mackenzie, Tracy did, you did a really good job, thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, folks, for your attention to detail on this and for your enthusiasm about it. I hope this is a very useful document.
Public comment, anyone, questions, concerns? Comments?
Wording point, would it be better to say, here's the craft of the document, potential expansion of Leslie Castle Park? Would it be better to say proposed or even anticipated, given that you purchased the land for the puppy dealership, that's ours?
Oh, I think you were talking about cross, Cascade.
Oh, I know they were talking about that. I'm saying that the potential expansion, I'm assuming that first phase would be what you have the conceptual drawings of for already, which would be near it or on the land, on the where the duck dealership is, and where that psychologist office is, and whatever set is that. So,
Do you want to know how much longer Cascade can stay in that building?
well, I think proposed would be like a better word there, because why would you purchase the land if you weren't going to expand it?
Okay.
Proposed expansion of the park, where the Tuffy Muffler is today.
Yeah, good thought.
Proposed expansion of Castle Park, where Tuffy Muffler is today.
So we're very specific.
Because we already own that.
Yeah,
And
I heard the point about the other side of Apple.
I didn't see anything, but I thought I heard in previous meetings that they're about the speeding on the roads. And under the transportation and safety, I see there's concerns about the intersections, but there's nothing like a task to evaluate at least the speeding on the Thornapple River Highway. I mean, is there something that?
Yeah, we don't control the speed.
Should we put,
We don't control, we've gone through, just to explain.
Yeah.
We've gone through this a lot of times with the road commission and the police. We've asked them to slow the speed down. We've asked them to monitor more and enforce more to slow the speed down, but we can't set the speed limit. They do. And one of the unfortunate things is that they'll come in and monitor the speeds. And if the speeds are faster, like if people are averaging 45 instead of 35, they want to up the speed, not lower it. So they kind of told us, be careful what you ask for, but we totally agree. We talked to them a lot. Ben has, Grace has.
Thornapple River Drive though is just.
People
All you can do is maybe put a few more curves in it.
They did it.
You can narrow it.
On snow, wasn't it, Tom?
Why do you have?
We did approve more funding for the police.
Yep.
We did.
Fridays and Saturdays for the past 2.5 months.
Yeah, so there's more control of it. We had a lot of complaints, I think it was on Snow Avenue, and we had the county go out and look at it because people wanted it to slow down, and they raised it 10 miles an hour.
I think that was Cherry.
Cherry
Alley.
Cherry Valley, right. Yeah, in that area.
Can we know when the speed study is and then put our additional specific patrol there when they're doing the speed study? So then get the numbers we want.
Back and forth.
All the speed
Yeah, for
drivers.
everybody in the township. Drive your personal cars 5 miles.
We'll pay for, we'll double up our additional patrol in that location.
I would suggest you.
They don't do well with that. That's more than those forces
Yeah.
do.
It currently says, if you're taking the intersection, I think they in corridors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in the DDA section, in the village section, it talks about, additional pedestrian bicycle safety zones through that Cascade Road, that's Cascade 4 as well. So it appears in a couple different spots.
We
But I
have,
think adding corridors,
And quarter.
we have a request, with low expectations, but in with the road commissioner right now to talk about, different people have brought up forcing traffic to go down Thornhills in the commercial district by closing off, Thorn Apple River Drive by the park. I do it, it's bad, I know it's bad, I totally do. No, bad?
And I do.
It's not up to us, but right now there's a planning commissioner that's got a meeting that, was it for you or Brian, man? I can't remember. Don't get your hopes up, or.
That's like cul-de-sac in some streets in the city of Wyoming, one South.
Oh, and then don't do it?
Yeah, it creates a, well,
But the problem is there's only so many different routes.
Which one do you want?
yeah, the one that.
This issue will be brought up in our strategic plan review. Yeah, that's within the scope of that. Obviously, ideas, dramatic ideas will be brought to the board and we'll get that on the street. But, I think that we know Cascade Road is a problem. We know that changing the speed limit sign is not possible and probably wouldn't work anyway. So we should think about other ideas and see what we should say. Doesn't mean close the roads is the option.
If you notice increase in the traffic on Cascade Road the past 3 weeks,
Yeah.
it's because people are taking that to bypass the freeway. Remember, Cascade Road is the emergency alternate route
Yeah, right.
for the freeway.
Because of the construction.
So be
Well,
careful about.
it's year round, there's a permanent sign there.
Right. Growing pain. Largely growing pain.
One of the things that I talked about that I've tried to push before was a new north-south corridor to interconnect Cascade Road and M21 up towards Lowell. All that traffic right now travels through Thorn Apple River Drive, and that's through the village of Ada. So there were several proposals. One was make snow through the street, put another bridge over the Grand River at Snow Avenue and connect to M21. Takes a lot of traffic out of the village.
But that would also destroy that area of the township, and we'd have gas stations and C-stores just like they do out on Lincoln Lake.
Absolutely.
And that's the other problem. You might kind of fix one thing and.
That was one of my.
Can we set a population limit and just not beyond it? No vacancy for humans.
Get out of here.
Sorry, that's getting close.
We're close. Sorry. All right, any comments or
We're not
questions?
trying.
Mid-storm? Storm, sorry. Mid-storm.
It means German.
Does it mean storm? Right, yeah. Know that.
Just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, I really like the direction this is going. I really like the strategic plan. I really like the way you guys have defined and drilled down on verbiage. And this is what I came with, concerns. This is my list of questions and concerns. You've answered almost every single one of them,
You want to hit the one
just
we
by
did?
observing and being in here. So one comment I'd like to make is I just would like to hear the word safety iterated more. That was the highest priority on those surveys. That was
Guess where
safety.
Manager Swayze and I were today at the lunch hour
Where
at a meeting with Grand Rapids Township and Ada Township supervisors and managers about our, we contract with the Kent County Sheriff's Office. We're gonna all go in on an additional patrol.
Thank you.
High visibility.
I also just wanted to say part of the safety discussion issues would be considering giving pedestrians the right of way in the village and posting that, letting people cross the street.
I mean, they do have the right of way.
Well, I heard they don't.
I heard they don't do.
Pedestrians,
And then we heard it was gray area. It's unclear. I think we should.
pedestrians always have the right of way.
Cascade Road, that's why on the island say, but cars will not stop for pedestrians.
Right, that's what I said.
You already know that.
But apparently there's a township, there's an ability to enact that. So that's one suggestion I have. Second is the timing of the lights and the pedestrian crosswalk when you push the button. Quite frankly, they seem a little better. I don't know if any action has been taken. But, boy, oh boy, being a resident walker, you could stand there for 5 minutes punching that button and, you know, good luck getting across at Cascade Road and 28th Street and at Cascade Road and Thornapple River Drive.
See, and I'm a biker. I found out it's easier to just wait for the National Park light.
Well, you know, I'm telling you, this is what I'm saying, that I think that for safety and for our pedestrians and for our community, you know, there's some actionable things that we could do. And for traffic at 28th Street and Cascade Road, 2 lanes left. And every direction that you can possibly let 2 lanes make a left-hand turn, you would eliminate a lot of traffic backup. And there are a few goals that have done 2 lanes left on their own. But I think that there's some management of those intersections, some concept without even widening the road that might be possible there. And there are initiatives that could slow the traffic down, people are crossing the street, and would make it a safer community. And the zoning for those little housing developments that have popped up behind Gordon, and one that you talked about, and there's a third one over by Cascade Village, where they built housing, high density housing, and didn't even put in a halfway decent street. And that could have been a real great traffic solution to help the businesses in the village, Cascade Village.
Which fire town?
You know the name of the road, you mentioned it. It's
Thornhill?
It's actually kind of on the corner of Thornapple River Drive. It's actually not on Cascade Road, it's back, but it's right next to foosball. Or it's Fall Lane.
Oh, back in Orange and Hurley? Orange, that's like Orange Street?
That strip, it's like an L kind of or a T development of
Hurley and Orange in that area.
Orange, yeah. That street I know the name of, I don't know the others, but that's high density housing. And the streets are so narrow and the driveways are the length of a car. You can't even widen the street. That is another example of, that could have been a solution for our community to help manage traffic flow in and out of the businesses of the village. So these are just my highlighted points
I think the example of
that we should do better.
what screams we need to look at our zoning ordinance more than that 1-story high density unit behind Culver's and Macataw Bank. Makes no sense. The road was improved after the thing went in.
And by the dentist, where now there are accidents, and that was another area.
Not
I
a lot.
brought it to the town, I brought it to Grace, as a public concern. Because I drive back there, I go to Gordon's and I drive that little street. And just seeing what's being developed back there, it's gonna be a nightmare.
Mhm.
And if we don't have any control over those roads, the miners, when they build anywhere, first thing they do is build the road infrastructure. They see that it happens. I don't know how they accomplish that, but I wish we could be a little bit better at that.
You gotta get the right, we have mostly the right staff. We just,
Be in front of it and red behind it.
yes, thank you. Good point. Anybody else? Anyone online?
Jessica said there was nobody online.
Okay. Is there a motion? Or any more
Motion to
comments?
adjourn the meeting since we have accomplished the goals.
Have we though? We've accomplished this, now we can accomplish the goal.
We accomplished the goals according to
A second?
I already did.
Oh, did you really? The motion by trustee Shipley and the support by trustee Norhuck to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for being here. I'd encourage you to come to the DA meetings.
I've been to them and I will.
Those exact issues are on their agenda for the next year.
Yes, you will.
Oh,
really that.
We did a
That
FOIA,
was-
okay. Well, what they want to do is make a board, and then you know where Shea Park is, where the lift station is? They wanted to make a right there,
right to Thornhill.